John, like I wanted to start with you first. One of your goals with this film was to show the South and Arkansas in a more nuanced way, and you more than accomplished that. From the cinematography to the layers within each character, there's so much depth and humanity in this story. What was that starting off point for you in shaping that perspective? And how did your background in editing help you craft a story where we're not always sure how we should feel about characters like Billy's, yet you still connect to them on a human level?
Yeah, I
Well, it's
mean,
an autobiography of John Michael's life.
yeah, this is pretty much, yeah, this is just a documentary about the way I was raised. No, no, I had a very normal childhood, but like I do think from a practical standpoint, when approaching the world and trying to create a nuanced version of Arkansas, I think it started with, yes, look, I didn't grow up in a family that was mired in crime, but all of these characters, the way they talk, the way they move, they're just my aunts and uncles and cousins and my mother. I mean, I drew so much from the people that I grew up with. When it comes to practically rooting for Billy and getting the audience to go on the journey, that's the challenge with revenge is it's a morally gray area.
Mm,
I say I like to make movies about good people making bad decisions for the right reasons. um, you know Billy's character Lucas, nobody would care about Lucas if honestly if the relationship between him and Alexander
yeah.
Shipp wasn't real. And honestly, like from the get-go, we knew we were like, if Billy and Alexandra, whoever plays that role, if they don't have chemistry right off the bat, and you
We're
don't,
screwed.
yeah, you're screwed. You really are if you don't. And you know, turns out Billy and Alexandra had amazing chemistry. She's such a light in this really dark film, and I think she's the one who, you know, through their, instant chemistry really sets off the whole story. And, honestly, like the end of the movie wouldn't land if you didn't love them at the beginning, and they're
Mhm.
amazing.
And there's such an effective use of flashbacks as well throughout the story that just makes that impact hit even harder. Without giving any spoilers, Billy, you do such a fantastic job bringing the contrast of this character to life, especially in how the film explores that intersection of identity and family, leaving audiences uncertain about what your character will do in those final moments. As an actor, how did you approach finding the balance between that push and pull, especially as grief threatens to unravel the future that he dreamed of?
Well, fortunately, you have someone write a script that you really enjoy reading, such as John Michael did, and it tells you everything about the character there. Um, Approaching it from my perspective is like the stakes of that relationship was his key to get out of the life that he was raised. I think that was really the anchor to everything. It's like the most powerful force in the universe is love, and if you take that away from
Mm,
someone, what do they have left? So that's the only way I could really relate to it. It's like I have nothing to lose anymore.
definitely
So
so.
again, like for characters and acting and stuff like that, I don't think you can become someone else. I don't think you can, but I think you could dial up aspects of yourself or ratios of yourself in certain ways.
I would challenge that because I feel like your performance in this is very transformative, and so, as somebody that like knows your work, it's such a different side to your artistry. And then John Michael, Violence N, was always meant to be your first feature, but as we see in the film, life has ways of taking unexpected turns. Looking back now, how did the send off shape your growth as a filmmaker and influence the direction of this film, whether it was in the writing, the way that you approach the story, or even in the edit?
Yeah, I mean, well, the send off,
Good question.
yeah.
Honestly, that was great.
Yeah, I mean, to give context, The Send-Off is a micro-budget film. We shot that movie in 12 days, um, all one location, all one interior location mostly. So the challenges with that was trying to build a world inside a house.
Mm,
And by that, I mean just making something that's small but feel really a lot bigger. And I think that helped me by the time we got to Violent Ends because I figured out I could take one room, one house and figure out how to spread it out into a cinematic landscape. By the time I got to Violent Ends, I literally had lands. I mean, Arkansas is beautiful. You can point the camera anywhere, but I think from a world building standpoint, I was so much better prepared. And then from a technical standpoint, it's when you're shooting 12 days, you have no time. You're
mm.
literally flying by the seat of your pants and you're having to make decisions, 1,000 decisions every second. So Violent Ends, honestly, it felt leisurely compared to, we shot the film in 22 days, and it felt like, I was so much better prepared at, yeah, just navigating the time crunch, and that left open opportunities to make creative discoveries, which is where all the juice is, right? All the best movies, all the best parts of any movie you've seen come from, extrapolations that you don't see coming. And so, yeah, I felt very prepared for Violent Ends.
Yeah, I have a question for you about that creative collaboration a little later. But Billy, I also love the juxtaposition within Lucas's stories and the relationships in his life, the way that his mother has influenced and shaped the man that he is, contrasts with somebody like Sid Frost, whose presence carries such a much darker space. How different is that collaboration working with somebody like Kate versus James? And in what ways did their interpretations of their character influence your own?
Well, everyone, both are fantastic artists and a treat to work with. First of all, that's the important thing. They show up prepared, excited, open to work. That's the only thing you could hope for in any collaborative art form. Um, Funny enough, I do believe how other characters view like my character
Mm-hmm.
is how it's defined. There's only so much I can do, but I think it's how the world receives a character that defines it a lot more. There's only so much I can do or shape until they step on set and actually define who I am.
There's so many context clues that you can get from those relationships, especially with Lucas and his brother and how they kind of inform one another. And John
Yeah,
Michael,
Nick Paul, awesome.
also
Nick's
fantastic.
I mean,
Everybody,
I was blown away. I grew up watching them, and it's like, oh, dude, it was great.
it feels like everybody in this ensemble is just elevating one another. And then John Michael, you've described filmmaking as guiding the process, giving space for collaboration, and then ultimately letting go. And that's something that really stuck with me because these performances, again, they feel so lived in. Was there a particular moment during this production where you felt that philosophy really come to life? And was there a character that took a different life because of that openness?
That's a great question. I mean, yeah, and I'm going to go back to the editing. You made a comment about me being an editor, and I think the value of having a background in editorial is, I've worked with a lot of directors as an editor who are very rigid in their intent, and that can work. Don't get me
Mm,
wrong. The beauty of being an editor is like I've made so many millions of choices. I've spent hundreds of thousands of hours of my life looking at performance, that I feel comfortable letting actors find whatever they want to find. They don't have to live within the rigidity of my intent. And I often find the moments where they paint outside the lines or they go left instead of right the most interesting. And when it happens, a lot of directors in the moment they'll lock up because, oh my gosh, the actor didn't, he was supposed to walk through that door instead of that door. Whereas my brain doesn't work that way. If I get excited when they go through the door on the left instead of the right, because then I re-edit the scene in my head and I can kind of jigger the whole thing and find new ways. And to me, you know, look, there's a time and a place to hold hands, but uh, mostly for me, when it comes to performance, this whole cast, they're working all the time. They're talented. They're at the top of their game. I'm there to help guide when we get lost, but for the most part, like I want them to, once I write it, it's their movie. I'm just there to help make sure that the building doesn't burn down, and that and then
Oh,
when,
you're not giving yourself as much credit.
yeah.
It's
well.
really good when you define it. You would define it on set. Like even if we discovered something, you're like, oh, you excitingly jumped on board more, kind of reiterating what you said, and you're like, oh, I could actually edit it and shoot it this way now.
Yeah. Yeah, but to answer your question too, you're like, did you ask the question, was there a moment or when I saw Badge, James Badge Dale come out of the wardrobe fitting, and that haircut was mostly Badge's idea. He presented some
Mm.
photographs to me. He was like, "What do you think about this?" And I remember being like, "Well, that's a choice. That's a definite choice." And I go, "Look, I'm cool with it, but you got to know that once we make that haircut, buddy, we're not going back. Once that hair is gone, it's gone." But like when I saw him step out, because Badge came out, Billy and I had already built a rapport. We had been working. When I felt his presence on set, I knew we had a movie, and I knew that him and Billy were going to be great going toe to toe. You could just feel, yeah, you could feel that conflict walk out of his trailer. It was great.
When
Yeah.
we would go for beers on the weekend, he just had the hat on.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so funny you call that out because there is a scene in the movie where you kind of highlight his hair and you're like, Oh, that's a character choice that's been
But
made of this. Yeah.
but that's a great example of I would not have made that choice had I not made that
Yeah.
choice for the haircut. So that choice of his haircut informed the way I shot that scene. And
Mm,
that came after the fact. So, it's a collaboration, as Billy said.
yeah. I think I have time for one quick question for you, Billy. But you've worked on projects of all sizes, but there's something really truly special about independent cinema. What is it about this art form that fuels your creative fire? And how does that connect to the stories that you want to tell through your production company or decision to help produce this film?
Yeah, I mean, like the thesis or the what do you call it?
The coda.
The coda of our company is to support artists around the world. Like there's shit I can do well, and then there's a lot of stuff I can't do. But there's other people out there that are so talented, and I'm inspired by them. And if I could help them in any way, I would love to celebrate that. Again, I think we're in a communal art form,
Mm,
and it only works when you're like sharing it together. Um, yeah, no, that always excites me. And like when you're on these type of films, you're just I've said this quote before, like as an actor, a lot of times you're just a hired gun or one color in someone else's palette. But when you produce, you get to really be the painter. You have the paintbrush and you get to play with all the colors and you get to
yeah.
help. Whatever. And like also it's like seeing, I don't know, I don't know why I'm relating it like this, but like, proud parent, you're like, go get him, go do it, yeah. And like, I don't know, that gives me the kick out of life. I've been in this industry, over 20 years now, and a lot of times when you're an actor, it's just so selfish. And
Mm.
I'd run a community. It's more exciting to see other people win.